Hi there, my name's John Stevens, pastor of Zion Lutheran Church in Oregon City, Oregon, and we're part of the ELCA, and welcome to Dollar Store Children's Sermons, where we take a look at the lectionary text and we tie them to an item from the Dollar Tree. This is for the 15th, easy for me to say, the 15th Sunday after Pentecost, and this is an interesting gospel lesson. So I'm looking at a couple of different lessons, a couple of different readings, and with an idea for the gospel lesson. I looked at, 6 years ago, I looked at what I did for this text when it came up, and you might want to take a look at that. It was like at the very beginning, like a year after I had started the Dollar Store Children's Sermons. It works. But it's like really one of those things where I'm like, again, I was glad 6 years ago I was going, what do you do with this text? So a couple of ideas for some of the readings. The second reading where Paul says, urging to keep everybody in prayer and supplication and this lifting up everyone. I like that phrase where it's like, I urge you to keep everybody in your prayers. So, the item I'm using for this, being that we're, every single store, the Dollar Tree has Halloween stuff out galore, and I love Halloween. I've been into arguments with people. I've had arguments or conversations with people that I shouldn't like Halloween like I do. But you know what? I do. And ever since I was a kid, it reminds me of God's grace. This is really a tangent, but it reminds me of God's grace. I was raised in the country, there was hardly any trick-or-treating nearby. I mean, we had a couple of houses we could go to, but to really go trick-or-treating, I had to be driven in to town, into Idaho Falls, Idaho. I was raised outside of Idaho Falls, Idaho, and driven into town, and then we would trick-or-treat in the areas. My parents had to bring me in, Grace was there. Grace to get me there. I didn't have anything to do with that. I get there, I walk up to the door, I ring the doorbell, and then I'm given candy, Grace. I didn't have to do anything for that. And it's just this image of grace after grace, grace upon grace upon grace. I love it. And the cross covers so much. My God is a powerful God. And there we go. I'm going to step off on that. I love the joy of Halloween. And it's joy. Using the Halloween theme, or at least using the fact that we've got all this at the Dollar Tree, you can get like 7 bags of candy for $7, and so you've got this bowl of candy, and the bowl of candy, we place it down, and we were out in the country, so my mom would put a sign that says, take one, but that bowl was for everybody. Everybody that came to that door received candy. When as an adult, I'll have kids come and they'll ring the doorbell, and I never once say to a kid, "Aren't you too old to trick or treat?" Because I'd rather have them trick or treating than other activities that they could possibly, as we all know, because we've taken part of some of those when we were kids. But just the joy of seeing these kids. But the bowl is for everybody. And so the stress of this is that when Paul is writing and says, lift up everybody. Lift up everybody, not just the people we like, not just the saints of the church. Lift up everybody in prayer. And I'm stressing that all, because sometimes we'll say all are welcome and we have an asterisk, which we don't mean all. Here, lift up everybody in prayer. And that's so there we go. That's the first one. The second is looking at the psalm, and the psalm is this where God lifts up the poor, lifts up the lowly, lifts up the barren, and lifts up, so here you can either use the item I'm thinking about is a pair of binoculars, because this idea that the psalm has God up high, looking down. So we got this pair of binoculars. But then it talks about how God doesn't stay there. God has to move in order to lift up the lowly. God has to move. I mean, it's a picture. It's a psalm. But a wonderful image about God coming close and wrapping God's arms around us and lifting us up. And so I like that image. So using the binoculars, that's that. The other thing is that in this, God is changing. It went lifting up the poor, and in that act, and being wrapped in God's arms, their identity changes. The barren who was childless, the barren woman who's childless now is wrapped in God's arms, and that image of becoming mother of all, not mother of all. Anyway, I've got the note here, but I can't remember exactly the right phrase, but it's just a wonderful image of God changing identity and changing who we are. So using again, that Halloween theme of costumes, about how we wear costumes to pretend that we are something else, that we are, for a while, I'm going to be Spider-Man, or every single year, I was always Dracula. Different forms of Dracula, whether it be a heavy metal Dracula, or a futuristic Dracula, or just standard Dracula, always Dracula. But we pretend and we play. In this, God changes our identity in the waters of baptism, and God changes our identity in God's grace and says, "You are mine." That isn't pretend. That we clothe ourselves with baptism. When God drenches us in this grace, we become children of God, and God claims us and loves us. Okay, so those are for the second reading and the psalm. Now for the gospel lesson. Good luck. No, just kidding. It really is. It's a strange gospel lesson. And the thing that I keep coming back to, and it's really a springboard, is a spray bottle. In the text, we have all where it ends that says, we can't serve two masters. You can't serve money and God. Well, we are in a world where money is an essential part, or currency is an essential part about how we get things done. And so a lot of it, I'm thinking, what drives us? What moves us into this world? And so the spray bottle, what I'm thinking about is that the spray bottle is a vehicle, is something to spray the water. And this idea that it's a weird thought, and I'm still working this out. It's springboard-ish, even if I don't even know. I think maybe it's trying to get on the springboard. But this idea that money, we use that to get the word out. It does not control us. We use it to do the mission that God is calling us to do. The parable's a strange way. I mean, and you can read the commentary on Working Preacher, you can read commentaries elsewhere, but it's a strange way to work out that God is getting God's work done, and I'm not even, there's other places to dig in that. But what I see ultimately is that we can use one thing, money, to then get the good news and grace. We can use that to share the good news. You use money to feed the poor. You use money to clothe the homeless. You use money to build shelters for the homeless. So this idea that, and that's why I'm thinking about this idea with the spray bottle. We've got the spray bottle, and you've got a bowl of water, and you want to spray, this idea of the spray bottle is a vehicle to get the water out there. And I like the spray bottle because it's a little bit different than a squirt gun. It's in a different shape. I don't know. I'm very hung up on that right now, which is not a bad thing. But using that. All right, I'm processing. You've been with me long enough to know that sometimes I get off going off this direction. Lots of stuff with this. I'm hoping that something in here can be a springboard for your own thinking. I really appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate you so much, the partnership in this ministry, and thank you, and have a fantastic week.